Hello and welcome to the Society with Barrister Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. They say breaking bread with someone makes you closer to them. Culturally speaking, food is very important for us because it not only helps us connect with our family members, it also helps us connect with our nation, with our country, especially when we are abroad. How does food help us in staying together? How does it help us in forming new relationships? This and much more we are going to be discussing in our today's show. At a very basic and general level, we'll be discussing how food, society and culture are all interrelated. We'll also be shedding light on the fact that how has the food industry, the restaurant industry, so to speak, been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and what, if at all, is the way forward. To discuss all this, I have a rather very interesting and a very dynamic panel with me here today. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Kamran Sheikh Saab, who's Pakistan's premier food consultant and food critic, alongside being the president of Lahore Restaurant Association and a hospitality expert. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Alongside him, I have Miss Sumayya Zaka, who's a food influencer and a food blogger. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And my third panelist for today's show is Raza Ahmed, who's a restaurant owner and an executive body member of the LRA, which is the Lahore Restaurant Association. Assalamu alaikum, Raza, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Sir, I would like to start the show with you and something, which I mentioned in my introduction as well, that when we talk about food, culture and society, it's something that, which is very deeply ingrained with each other. But to start off, how do you connect, this whole culture of fine dining with interior designing, or vice versa? Because you are that one person who introduced us to this culture of fine dining and to this whole culture of eating out, so to speak, especially in Lahore.
The ambience that you create in fine dining, because I think all chickens are the same, whether it's the left breast or the right breast.
Right.
All chickens are the same, and they come from the same egg.
Exactly.
So it's how you present it and how well thought out together that you have your sauces and your temperatures and to exhibit the fluency of the food that you're presenting. That is what fine dining sort of takes us.
And of course, the interior designing element adds to it, sir, because it's a combination package at the end of the day.
Well, without that, you wouldn't be able to create an ambience.
Exactly.
And that's one of our senses that we need, besides the taste, and we need to have the look and the sound, and service is part of that too.
So basically, coming to you, Sumayya, I think sir has generally told us how fine dining links with interior designing and how today it's more about the experience that anybody wants to have as opposed to just having, a meal at the end of the day. But how do you as a food influencer, how do you as a food blogger in Pakistan see the trends evolving over a period of time, especially when it comes out to, dining out and eating out?
I mean, there are certain places here that you see that have the same interior design, certain cafes, they literally look the exact same, and there are also certain restaurants that try to mimic each other. So I think we really need to implement certain differences between restaurants. Like if you have a cafe, stick to the cafe theme. If you have a fine dining place, stick to that. But you can't make a cafe.
But what if a restaurant is offering 2-3 different kind of cuisines?
I mean, I think you need that niche, because you can't become a cafe and offer, like Thai food. That'll be just so random. The customer won't be pleased. Your interior will be so confused, and that's something you don't want. You don't want to confuse the customer. Like I can't be sitting in a cafe and be offered Chinese food.
I think there has to be some basic commonality, because like we were earlier discussing before the show, sir, that there are restaurants, very known iconic restaurants, which Kamran Saab has designed for us in Lahore, basically, which offer more than one cuisine. So there has to be
designed. They've also put them together from
exactly,
A to
sir.
Z.
Exactly, I stand corrected on that. So you need to have that common element to which people can relate to when they are going there, knowing that they will be offered not one different kind of cuisines in that
but
capacity.
they all need to have something in common, right? You can't have like a wide variety of food and then it won't make sense to the customer. They'll open the menu,
of course,
and they won't be able to choose what to have, and then they won't be able to connect that name with that restaurant, and especially with the menu as well. So I think that uniformity needs to be there at a certain level as well.
Right. But I think then again, this is also a very specific kind of a debate, because I will be touching upon the other kind of restaurants as well, just not here in Pakistan, abroad too. But Raza, coming to you, you started your venture in 2016 and it's a pan-Asian restaurant, so to speak. So how easy or how difficult was it to break into the Pakistani market? Because this is a non-traditional kind of a cuisine, and there are people, specific kind of people who like this kind of cuisine.
So it was, for me, it was relatively a little easier than I would say to break in, because generally Lahori people prefer either Chinese food or Pakistani food. So I picked up Chinese food and sandwiched it between Thai food and Pan Asian, and that's what you have in our restaurant.
And now you're also offering, I think, Japanese sushi
Yeah,
off late for
yeah.
quite some
so
time,
that
basically.
covers the most Pan Asian
Pan
part.
Asian.
with-
But I still think that, you know, it's one of the most difficult cuisines to play around with, because there is so much room for fusion and you really need to get into that cuisine to be able to understand all the core features and all. But Raza, generally, you know, when we talk about different kinds of cuisines here in Pakistan, how diversified do you feel is our food palette?
It's really not.
It's really not. Okay, great.
People just still want stuffed chicken breast or chicken steak.
And also that too, I think something which we were also discussing earlier, made in a certain way. So like you can't sell typical Thai food, so to speak, typical Chinese food here in Pakistan.
I think that we've not trained our palate, and it's very important that you train your palate not when you are my age, you much earlier you train your palate. We haven't done that.
And sir, but I think to that, to some extent, that's not even our fault as a society, because you know, it also your palate, the way how developed it is, also depends on how well traveled you are, what level of exposure you
I'm
have.
talking about locally also. I'm talking about, it's not a negative. It's not a negative in any way, but I think we've not trained our palate. We think that chicken corn soup is the Cantonese style, that is the only chicken corn soup. It's not true. But again, the exposure is not there.
Of course.
And then since the exposure is not there, it's very difficult to understand for people that don't have the exposure. You know, when we were young, you know, you taste a little bit of Marmite, and a lot of people would absolutely freak out.
Right.
Okay, this is the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. But that is what I'm talking about. We need to have developed palates. We have too much of copying each other, staying in the safe zones.
But I think maybe you might beg to differ on this, because I know you are out there, you're reviewing all these restaurants. For example, sushi, if I approach this, like I'm not from this industry, but from a layman perspective, I think the sushi trend has picked up in the past few years. It was not there.
That's also because what Kamran Saab said, you know, you need to introduce certain cuisines to the population.
So they're
to the
both sides
masses.
of the argument.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
very important to look at reality, which is, if you don't do a specific restaurant of a specific cuisine, you're never going to train the public.
Absolutely.
Right.
I
And you
think
need to give people that
introduce new things
So
as
we
exposure.
are
well.
more interested in, you see, we're not working with, now we are, mashallah, beginning to work with chefs. We're not working with chefs, which means we're not being professional enough
Right.
to come up with an experience that is awestruck with, even if you've never had Hunnan cuisine before, which is the dark brown and over Szechuan and
Right, sir.
whatever. If you've not had that cuisine before, it is going to taste strange to you.
But you
Of
need
course.
to try it.
But you need to try it, and of course you need to make
understand.
it available, because with sushi
Absolutely.
as well, I think the biggest criticism that is usually said about sushi is the fact that, you know, it's something for the elite. Not everybody can afford it. Not everybody can access it. And I think in that way, your restaurant did a good thing that, you know,
But I
you
don't think
launched it
that's
on
too
your
broad,
menu too
right?
last year.
Yeah.
Basically a year or two before. This was quite
3
recent.
years.
3 years basically. But how do you as a food influencer see these, you know, ups and downs in our local food trends?
Like you initially said, sushi is very, like, you know, it's for the elite over here, but over, like, in countries like America, it's available at your gas stations.
I'm talking about Pakistan.
So in Pakistan, sushi is considered that elite food because people don't have the palate for it, especially if you consider nigiri sushi. People just say, oh, you know, this is raw fish, like what's up with that? Because we're not used to eating raw fish. We're used to eating, you know, like fish salons or something like that, or fried fish for that matter. So I think it goes back to just training the customer, training that palate, and, you know, making some things available, because sushi is now being introduced in a few restaurants, which is really good to see.
In a
But
few restaurants again, yeah, they're the stresses basically.
Yeah.
But Raza, I think in that regard, what the work that you are doing, the kind of cuisine that you're working on, that in itself is also very specific, very particular, because you need to take a lot of things into account. So how did you manage, you know, getting into that Thai cuisine and then, of course, translating it, because you are doing quite a good job in that regard. Have you like chefs from abroad, or have you trained them to cook Thai food?
We actually hired professional chefs from the market who were already trained, but we had our own recipes, which we hired another consultant to do with us, and then that's how we started our menu. So sushi we just recently started about 3 years ago. That's most of the sushi that we serve is primarily available already in the market. That's nothing of our own bat, or I'd say very innovative. But what I've seen critically is people generally, again, when they order, they're ordering the safe food, like fried rolls.
But even amongst the sushi, I think there are one or two favorites which are the comparatively safer ones which
Yeah.
people want to go for. So would you want to add something to that?
There's
Because I know.
nothing safe. I mean, you know, if we look at safe food and then deciding that I'm going to have sushi, if you're going to have sushi, you're already not safe, right? Because you're talking about raw fish, raw seafood. But Pakistanis don't like fish.
I think we do like cooked
No,
fish
no.
quite a bit.
You like Lahori fish only, which is
I
fried.
like Karachi fish as well,
and
quite a
you
bit,
like
yeah.
prawns. That's it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
You
So
don't know
I think
if it's
people
fish,
again
crabs,
coming back to the
lobster,
same
there's
thing.
no concept
No.
here.
People who are staying abroad and you know they're immigrants maybe in a country, a multicultural country like the UK.
Yeah.
So food is that one thing on which you connect with so many other people. That's that one thing through which we know maybe Pakistanis sitting together at some point in time they would be able to connect. So in that sense I meant that how does it help you reinforce your identity?
I think we as human beings need interaction. And socially, ideally, when you're eating with someone, you break some barriers. You break some barriers of formality and you break some barriers of personalities. So that's why you see the Arabs eating out of a thal, a huge big dish that they go through, and 8 of them. I mean, I went to an Arab place and they took some meat and broke it down and put it in front of me. And I said, what is this? And I ate it.
Exactly, so that too, and I think my maybe what I was saying was more in a you know global context that way, but maybe of course if you're staying in Pakistan you don't need to reinforce it that way. But I think young people here also have a very pivotal role to play, because I think young people connect with each other over food, because it's unfortunately one of the very few occasions which you get to you know spend,
Absolutely.
you know, socialize. It's kind of a leisure activity here in Pakistan.
Yeah, there's nothing much to do
because
here, so
there's
you just
nothing
go out
much to do
eat.
that way.
Yeah.
But the young people should not be trained to McDonaldize themselves.
Right.
You see,
They should
or
basically
Kentucky Fried
develop
themselves.
their
Yeah, yeah.
food
No,
palates.
you see, we are already making those barriers even stronger, you know, by going to do the McDonald's. Young people don't know food at all.
Influencers are doing a pretty good job of doing that, you know, introducing certain things. But then again, like if it comes down to paid influencers, then the whole story changes, right? Restaurants call
That is
these
something I'll
influencers
also
as
come
well.
to, because you know there's one thing which I really like about your job is the fact that you get approached by so many people,
Yeah.
all the eateries and all the restaurants which are opening up, that you know come, we'll invite you and you have to review the food. But practically I'm sure it's not possible for you to go to every restaurant which
Absolutely.
you know sends you an
No,
invite.
you need to have a certain like
I
you
was
need to have
about to
certain
that where are
controls
the
as well.
blogging ethics, because you know for
Exactly.
every profession, be it media,
Yeah.
be it law, be it hospitality, be it medicine, we have our you
Absolutely.
know set of
No,
ethics.
I think as an influencer, you need to have certain controls. You can't just go to every place that invites you. You need to see what the place is like, because I've been invited to certain places which I know the food isn't good, and if I tell my audience, my people who follow me, if I tell them that you know certain XYZ place is good, they will go to that place, and at the end of the day, they will test my credibility. They'll ask me, you know, you said that this was good, but it wasn't good. So what do you think? Were you paid for it? What's going
I
on?
think that disclosure of information you should make, because
Absolutely,
whenever you're
you need to.
writing a review, you
Yeah,
should
yeah.
tell your audience it's
that
only
I
fair
was
that,
invited by
that
XYZ
you were invited
restaurant.
and that it is
But I
paid.
think it's also up to the restaurants as well, because certain restaurants don't like you critiquing them. You know, they want that foo-foo critique from you, and you know, like, okay, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, that's it. But you need to explain to the people why it's a 7.
Right. But generally we have seen that food bloggers like Sumaya have, you know, carved their niche in the Pakistani food blogging industry, so to speak. So, you know, what importance must restaurant owners like yourself attach to them, if any?
Influencers have become a pivotal, I mean, they do have an integral role in terms of the marketing these days. But at the same time, I feel there should be some responsibility over the influencers and the restaurants on both sides. As a matter of policy, when we invite anyone for free food, we would ask them to be impartial about the food, to give a real review and not hide anything, so that at the end of the day, we also have an idea of how the food really was, and not a totally blemished piece which
completely
gives us
sponsored
nothing
one.
back.
But I think not many restaurant owners, think like you, because a lot of people don't take
They want you to be
constructive
biased.
criticism
Since they're
positively. So
feeding
you
you.
have to have
I
that.
think there were most of the restaurants that are sort of little off. They think by getting a blogger, they want the positive from the blogger. They want to sell their product through a blogger. That is not the concept of what the bloggers
They're
is
not
all
ready to listen to the negative.
No, they're not.
And they don't want to be corrected. If you tell them that, this service isn't good, your food is cold.
They think that you're being smart or
exactly,
something. Yeah.
and they'll not call you again.
Yeah.
But
They
then
won't
this
even
is so
reply
unfair
to you.
to the people who follow you, because they would take whatever you're saying as the gospel truth. And there's a
Absolutely.
reason why they follow you at the end of
That's
the day.
where
So I
this
think the
responsibility lies
ethical
on the
responsibility
influencer.
needs to
Absolutely,
kick in
it
when we
does.
talk about bloggers.
Absolutely.
And this is just not, I think, in terms of food blogging, any kind of blogging. For
Any
that
type,
matter.
exactly. You need to be honest with your reviews, because at the end of the day, if you have such a following and you guide people wrongly, then there's no point. You need to just you can delete your account. There's no point of being an influencer of sorts, because if you're influencing the masses, you need to be able to be, you need to be truthful to them.
But I think it's becoming now a very strong marketing tool.
It is, but people
and I
misuse it as
don't
well.
think it should be.
Okay.
I
so,
don't think
so
it
you're
should
from a completely different school of thought.
Oh,
so
absolutely. I'm a very different school of thought, because I feel by telling a beautiful face, you're also very pretty.
Thank you.
A beautiful face to say, that's the best place, and it's not. That's not.
So, but I think at the end of the day, it's something which could be balanced maybe.
Yes, of course.
Because, if I am wanting to go to a restaurant which has recently opened up, and I am reading
You would
her-
like to know what the
I would
rating
like to
is.
know, but at the same time, I would at least do my fact checking by maybe, looking up the restaurant online, seeing if any newspaper articles or any magazine coverage they've gotten, any kind of traditional media coverage for that matter.
And
or
not
maybe
stick to one person's review.
yeah, exactly.
basically.
So you just don't need to rely on that one blog post in order to be able
You
to
need
make
to
that
follow
decision.
a different
Yeah,
range
you
of
can
people,
rely on that
different groups.
mainstream media coverage in that regard as well. But coming to you, Razana, I think in this regard, what we must also talk about is the fact that why is it important for restaurant owners like you to be more diverse, to be more inclusive, especially in the COVID-19 pandemic?
We're already doing takeaways and deliveries, and which was one of the biggest learnings within my business, that if we didn't have takeaways and deliveries, we wouldn't have survived. We would have been shut by now. And because of this, we were able to retain most of our staff. None of them were laid off. And I think this is the only industry that survived on its own and was probably employing the most number of people post and pre-pandemic times.
And it was something, I think it's one of those very, very necessary industries, because I think beauty is something maybe you might be able to do without fashion by the same yardstick, but food is something that you can't compromise in. But let me rephrase my question. When we talk about diversity, I mean like reaching out to your, the kind of customers you have, like for example, making the spaces more accessible for a differently abled person in that way, or maybe, cutting down on your costs so perhaps more people can afford to come to your place, or for that matter, even have car dine-ins or, order takeaways. So inclusivity with the reference to both the masses as well as your employees.
So when you talk about inclusivity, about the financial reach, I'm sorry, in Pakistan, you can't, I mean, it's a very broad term, because 1,000 rupees for me means something else, and 1,000 rupees to another person mean totally different. So, I mean, I can't say that our cuisine will be or is fully inclusive, because we use a lot of imported ingredients, but at the same time, we're not too highly priced. We're reachable. Our price range is close to the franchises that sell fast food.
So I think that in itself is inclusive too.
Yes.
If you consider it by that yardstick. But sir, coming to you, I think a very important thing which we must talk in today's show is the fact that food has that capacity like politics to become a bit sensitive, because when I was researching for the show, I came across this very interesting incident that, you know, there was this restaurant in New York in USA. It was basically opened up by Americans, and they were, you know, selling Chinese food there, but the way that they were marketing it was not right, and it became such a sensitive matter for the Chinese community there that, you know, things got a bit out of control. So in your experience in the hospitality industry, have you you know, come across any such incidents here when food has become a sensitive topic for us Pakistanis?
Not at all. Not at all. But I think you were talking about the exception to the rule. Food cannot become sensitive. I mean, you know, you don't have the palate for it, that's another story.
So in that sense, I think sensitivity when it comes, especially when religious factors come into play.
Absolutely, absolutely, because some people are kosher oriented, some people are halal oriented.
Right.
Some people don't think halal is important, and so that can become extremely politically incorrect. Food can do that, and it can create enemies. Even best friends can turn out to be enemies.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So it does have that potential.
Because you're touching your emotional intelligence with your religion, you see. That's what you're doing.
Exactly. And I think it's the same with politics as well, basically.
Food's not
all the
about
time.
that. It's not about such things.
No, but to the extent that it is not considered or associated with religion, like Sir, you know, rightly so pointed that out. But coming to you, I think COVID-19, something which earlier Raza was also saying, has affected the food industry. But in that regard, has it affected your work? Because food bloggers, I still see them around. They might not be blogging as much because you don't get that opportunity to physically go visit a restaurant and review the food there. But I think it has also redefined the contours of blogging, hasn't it?
It kind of has. Certain restaurants also adapted, you know, they started sending these care packages at the person's house where they could create their own like dish with the ingredients that the restaurant had sent over. But it also forced a lot of these bloggers to start cooking themselves. You know, there are certain bloggers that only give reviews and they think they know everything about food, but they don't even know how to make an egg. So I think it's pushed influencers to that limit as well, where they started cooking themselves, experimenting themselves.
Because they have to keep the audience
Exactly.
engaged.
Realizing how,
That it's not that
How
easy.
hard it is
Exactly.
basically at the end of the day. But I think in this regard as well, the test is very clear, or rather should be very clear. Then how do you identify an authentic food blogger, food influencer from one which is not something which Sir was also earlier pointing out?
Well, the person that doesn't take money is the authentic one.
Okay, then I think by that definition,
come.
sir,
I'm sorry,
people in the food blogging industry, they will go out of business.
Then they should.
So let this narrative come from the
All right,
person who
all
is
right.
representing
We'll
their
let the lady
community.
decide.
Yes, please.
I mean, I don't think there's any harm in taking money from it, but as long as you come to an agreement with the owner, with the restaurant owner, that, you know, I'm going to give you a very fair review.
There are a lot of jobs in our lives that we do as a choice because we make money of them. That it doesn't mean that they are the right jobs.
That's also true, but
so I think, but then to each their own.
A blogger, the concept of blogging or concept of reviewing is not to make money, is to inform the general public what you think, that they have respect for your opinion to go out here and there and what to try and what not to try.
that's also true, because when I started out, I never thought about making money off of what I did.
I
but,
think
you know,
both of you are true in your own respective, you know.
Yeah, but I also.
But
I'm
I
a
think
blogger,
Raza's
but
opinion
I'm a
on
blogger
this.
too.
Raza, what would you say on this?
I think in today's age, we need bloggers, we need influencers, but definitely the responsibility has to be there. There needs to be some sort of, I don't know, I can't come up with a mechanism where, you know, the bloggers are impartial or the restaurants are not overly influencing the bloggers. But at the same time, have you heard of a law firm defaming their own client? It's a
No, law
complicated.
firm would never do
No,
that
no,
because lawyers know the laws.
no,
Yes,
so
But,
that's my
you're
point.
right. Yeah,
That's my point.
You're right.
So
I
it's
agree
a,
with you on that.
It's a conflict of interest.
It's just
And you
something
need to,
new in
I
the
think you
world.
need to use it intelligently, and you need to use it in a way which is also, you know, productive for the other person who's reading out your blog.
Just so new, so you don't have any written set of rules right now, because even food influencers are very few in the market, like reviewers especially. You know, people go out, think they're reviewing places, but they just put up pictures and say, you know, this was good. I think that's not a very genuine review. You need to give people examples of what you liked, what the flavor combinations
What
were.
the culinary aspect of the food
Exactly.
is.
If you
So-
don't have your palate
then
put
again,
together,
coming back to that.
how can you be a blogger?
So, but
yeah.
then by that definition, I think so many people would not blog, which is in a way good because you're setting the bar high.
You
but,
have to.
But sir, then
You're giving
it is also
you're
detrimental to
giving-
those who are making money out
No,
of
but
it.
you're giving this opinion of yours, and the people are following you to a certain degree.
I agree.
And you're giving an opinion to millions of people, or thousands of people. You know, and that I think that takes in a lot.
Of course, that
I
puts
don't
you
know
in a very tight
of,
spot.
out of the 100 bloggers that I know, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 know what food is.
You met me today, you know me, I think.
Yes.
Yes, sir, but coming to, I think in this regard, it's very important that we discuss the COVID-19 angle and you put it in this discussion too, because that is the most relevant thing today. So how do you feel has COVID-19 and this pandemic generally affected the food and beverage industry, not only of Pakistan, but world over?
I think there are 2 situations here.
Right, sir.
One is the COVID itself, we're all aware of that, and how unconditionally we cannot control it, or whatever the reason. The second one is the general policies, because of not knowing the pandemic and the effects or the destruction of the pandemic, policies have been very mungled, very mixed. You know, one person wanted this, the other one wanted that, but it's really destroyed the restaurant business.
I think
It's
more than
actually-
any other industry.
I think 60% of the restaurant, Raza, are not going to come back in the next.
Especially the smaller ones. But, you know, considering that you own a restaurant yourself and sir is heading this, he's the president of LRA, which is your Lahore Restaurant Association. As a restaurant owner, what do you feel have been the biggest challenges? Has it been, you know, cutting down on your staff? Has it been investing more in marketing and advertising? Because now you have to get hold of, you know, more people through social media. Or has it just been, you know, more cost because of, you know, adhering to the SOPs?
Actually, the biggest challenge has been the next day. You don't even know what's going to happen next, and then the way you plan things in the morning, you don't even know if the policy that you decide today is going to be valid for tomorrow. So the restaurants finally are opening up after a break of 7 months.
That too with a lot of uncertainty,
Yes.
because they are saying that a 4th wave is
Yeah.
expected in July.
Yeah.
And a
So
5th one too.
Oh, there
So
you go.
how do we prepare for that? How do we financially prepare for that? How do we manage our manpower? So it's a lot of ifs and buts when we start the morning. So it's like I start a new business every day.
Right.
I
But
think it would be
Raza,
wonderful.
I think
it would be wonderful if the restaurant industry got the industrial status.
Yes.
right.
That would
Just like
really
tourism
put
has,
it
yeah.
on the plank.
Right,
You
sir.
know, because I think the government has recently done with the tourism, you know, which is wonderful
Exactly.
for tourism. But hospitality is not really a part of tourism. Tourism is a part of hospitality.
Right, sir. And
You
the
have it
food
other way
industry
around.
is the biggest segment of the hospitality industry that way.
Absolutely.
So we need to give it its due importance.
Yeah, but if we could, you know, with all that has gone wrong with the business, and all that is destroyed, of the livelihoods of millions of people all over the world, and even in Pakistan for that matter, if we could bring the restaurant industry into a industrial status, I think it would in the future help
It would really-
a great deal.
So coming to you basically, Sumaya, what are the challenges you feel as a consumer out there that you people have faced when it has come to the you know, pandemic, especially when it comes to, you know, not being able to go out to eat with your friends?
I think trust has been the biggest issue, like personally speaking with friends and family as well. You don't know where the food is coming from, so hygiene needs to be considered. So I think it's up to the restaurants to show their consumers that, you know, SOPs are being followed, they're doing, they're preparing the food hygienically, because that trust factor was kind of what was COVID-19 actually like brought out in people, because they didn't know where the food was coming from, where the ingredients were sourced from. So I think that became a really big issue, but people did start cooking at their own houses. So I think it was kind of like a it
was
wasn't
balanced out
It was
too.
balanced out, exactly. So people started trying different things at home. So that's where I think the influencer market grew a little bit, because they encourage people to try out restaurant quality dishes at home, which is what I do. You know, you don't need to go to a certain restaurant to make, you know, something very basic that you crave
No, but
at
in
home.
the event that you do want to, you know,
Yeah.
order something, or you want to have a
Then you
takeaway,
do, then you
then
do.
you do need to take that
Absolutely.
risk, and of course then you have to
Then
play it out
it
at the
wouldn't
end.
really be a risk, because, you know, you trust that restaurant wherever the food is coming from. You'd know, you'd have that association with them.
Sir, but coming to you and coming towards the conclusion of the show, we do know that you are the president of the LRA, that is the Lahore Restaurant Association, and I know that it has been very actively working to protect the rights of restaurant owners. So what all has been done, and what all, what more is on your agenda?
Well, more on the agenda is we're going to try our best to get ourselves industry status. I feel that a lot of the ambiguities and a lot of the issues that we are having will be cleared and perhaps be financially more viable for this industry to survive. Because today, if you put up a restaurant, it's just the amount of money that you have to put out. The returns are not there. They're just not there. That's why you see tiny little restaurants all over the place. Nobody's going to come out in a grand way or a 50-plus seater, because the cost of doing a restaurant today is unbearable. Okay.
And right, so one more thing which I would want to ask you, that I do know that you only take on registered restaurants, so to speak, under your ambit. What about the ones which are not registered? So they don't have any rights at the end of the day?
They're not registered. That means they're not paying any taxes. And if they're not paying any taxes, they don't have any.
But I think the pandemic has been very unfair on them, because it hit them the most. That blow has been the hardest on them.
No, you can't really say that they've been hit the most.
No, they haven't.
No, the smaller enterprises.
No,
you see,
the bigger you are,
show, just a mom and pop show is not going to get hurt so much.
Yeah.
You see, it's the establishment, it's an institution like a restaurant that's going to get affected. You were 80 people to serve a 70-seater, 80 employees to serve a 70-seater. That's going to get affected.
Right.
A mom and pop, they were doing that before. There's a person that sits somewhere in St. Anthony's selling kabuli chana or something.
So not the roadside dhabas I'm talking about, comparatively the smaller restaurants, which of course have not gone to the level of iconic restaurants. Raza, but coming to you, I think we should also talk about the work of the Islamabad Restaurant Association, and then also the APRA, which is the All Pakistan Restaurant Association, because I know that it's also doing its own due bit to promote Pakistani cuisine with the government of Pakistan, which is in itself very good.
No, all these associations are working with LRA, and LRA is working with them. And anything that we do in terms of the industrial status as well is being done together. And it's an alliance of associations which has been working closely since the start of the pandemic. But at the same time, I just want to touch upon a point which I thought you guys missed, was the issue of being registered or not registered. And I feel strongly about it. One of the reasons that I feel, again, for getting the industrial status would be really important for everyone to get registered. The problem within our country is the black money and white money. So we have to solve that. And once we solve that, we'll, solve other big problems. Industrial status is something that we have to get. Without that, I
think that's very rightly put. You've streamlined the issues. First, getting the industry status, and then regulation within the industry itself.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's how you put it up.
Tremendous help.
Exactly. And what would your concluding comment be in this regard? And I think from you, I would like to draw on the social element again, because I think we've had that narrative on how the industry has evolved, what challenges it had to face, and how COVID impacted it, and then what possibly could be the way forward. How do you feel as a young Pakistani out there, not as a food blogger, that, how do you feel does food connect with our society, with our culture, and how can we use the same to our advantage?
I mean, it's something very basic in every household. You connect over food, you have get-togethers over food. It's in our culture, it's in our religion of sorts. On Eid, we have these big dinners, lunches and everything. So not per se like speaking about the restaurants, but even at home, you need to try different things, I feel. You need to be experimenting as well. You can't stick to those certain things that you always try. You have that dal, you have that sabzi, but you need to try more things.
I think you need to experiment more, something what Kamran Saab also earlier pinpointed to, and also the fact you should use, personally I feel that young people need to start using social media more positively, more constructively, in a way which helps them improve their relationship with food, rather than, adversely
plus
affecting
restaurants
it.
as well. You have these kids that are targeting restaurants and they're doing it very unprofessionally. There need to be certain guidelines, I feel. Even if you're giving reviews, like I said earlier, you can't just give them a number, and then the restaurant owner will get so confused because they need, I mean, you should give constructive criticism, but there are also certain restaurants which don't appreciate that criticism.
What's the rating all about? How do you define 1 to 10?
And
I think-
whose 1 to 10 are you defining?
Yeah.
I think once you get the industry status, then all these things can be put one by one into everything. Yeah, that is a very relevant
everybody-
question.
And I must
everybody
tell
has
you
their own
that
1 to 10.
LRA was the first association in Pakistan. The EPRA and the rest of them have come out later. Okay, because of the issues that were beginning to pile up on this industry. You know, we decided in Lahore that we should put our heads together, and without being too banditism, you know, we become, you know, because we are supposed to be a businessmen with ethics. And then that is how LRA started.
Thank you so much, Kamran Saab. Thank you so much, Sumaiya, and thank you so much, Raza, for being here with us today. Well, to conclude today's show, the only thing that I would want to reiterate is the fact that, you know, we all know that the different factors, be it, you know, the culture you belong to, be it the society you belong to, be it for that matter, the religion you have, they all in themselves dictate the kind of food preferences you have. But we need to get over and above these issues. What we need to understand, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic context, is the fact that how has the food and beverage industry of Pakistan generally been impacted by this pandemic, and what all needs to be done to revitalize it. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.